Got a solution to a big problem? One that will help build a better world? We want to hear it. Share your solution here with the new economy.
Already cut production more than required under the deal between OPEC and its allies. This is Bloomberg.
Global Blood Therapeutics is developing a drug that would significantly extend the lives of patients with sickle cell disease. It's also a Wells Fargo customer. Here's how CEO Dr. Ted Love says the bank helped his company deliver on its mission.
I came out of retirement to treat patients with sickle cell disease. With Wells Fargo, we raised about $250 million. It's the largest sum of money that we had ever raised. If our drug, voxelotor, gets approved, in a very short period of time, we will have changed the lives for 100,000 people in the United States and literally millions of people around the world.
Wells Fargo bankers average over 15 years of experience in healthcare banking. They're making a difference where it matters. Find out more at wellsfargo.com/healthcarebanking.
Withum Wealth Management offers investment and wealth advisory services to high net worth individuals and institutions, putting your interests first. Visit withumwealth.com for more information.
Got a solution to a big problem? One that will help build a better world? We want to hear it. Share your solution here with the new economy.
When I first joined Icon, I was surprised how welcoming and open everyone was. It doesn't matter which office you go to, it seems like everyone is really excited to be there. Every company will tell you they have great team spirit and culture. But to me, that's what's really special about this place. I know I'm at the right place, and I'm really excited about what the future might bring.
Bloomberg Business Flash
generated social media outrage over a tweet. Protesters have shown up at his front door, and he is now being greeted by a new nickname. Joining us is Laura Litvan, Bloomberg News congressional reporter. Laura, he used to take some delight in his former nickname, the Grim Reaper, but with the mass shootings over the weekend, is his Teflon personality cracking under pressure at all?
Well, this is, of course, supposed to be a sleepy month back in the home state, and he has, I'm sure, been planning on focusing on his reelection bid. But he's been taking lots of criticism. He went to a political event in Fancy Farm, Kentucky last weekend, and Democratic protesters were yelling Moscow Mitch when he was trying to speak. This is reflective of his unwillingness to move election security legislation that President Trump does not want to see advance in the Senate. And so that followed him back home. He had protesters on his doorstep, as you mentioned. He was recovering at home from a fractured shoulder on Sunday, and the police had to be called. The big issue for him right now, though, is this emerging debate on gun control after we had, 2 mass shootings in just 24 hours over the weekend. It's a very difficult issue for him to navigate. He's from a pro-gun state, and he has a reputation for defending gun owner rights, but there's a lot of pressure building from Democrats and within his own party. And he's going to have a difficult challenge in the fall because President Trump is once again sending mixed signals that he's going to have to navigate on that issue.
Is McConnell sending signals that there are some kinds of legislation he'll put up for a vote?
He's been pretty quiet about what he would like to see. And he put out a press statement this week that said that he had spoken with 3 leading committee chairs about looking into what they might do, but he was quiet about what he wanted to see. What we are seeing is that a number of Republicans, including at least 2 members of his own leadership team, are calling for legislation that would encourage states through grants to adopt red flag laws that allow, say, a member of a family who believes someone in their household is mentally ill or they have some other concern about possession of guns, and then the local authorities can take the guns away. And there's that, we're seeing some interest in that kind of legislation. The more stringent background gun controls, like background checks at gun shows, closing the loopholes for the background checks. Only 2 Republicans right now are seemingly supportive of that. Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania and Susan Collins from Maine. And based on past practice, I think what McConnell will do is kind of wait for people to come back from the August recess and see what his own rank and file wants to do on this issue. Of course, 4 weeks distance between these attacks and those kinds of meetings that they might have face-to-face when they return might take some of the pressure off this. And that's often what the advocates of gun rights want to see.
Now, he's facing re-election in his home state. Is there any possibility that he might not be reelected?
We think that the chances, and a lot of the independent analysts that look at this also think that his chances are pretty strong of getting reelected, but he's going to be a top target. Democrat Amy McGrath is running against him, and she'll be able to raise a lot of money when he's, such a lightning rod. And, he has to be careful about every vote he takes. He has to spend a lot of time back home making sure that he can shore things up, because the fact is, some polling shows that he is actually the most unpopular senator in the U.S. Senate right now. Morning Consult tracks this regularly, and that's kind of emerged in their polling. Number 2 is Susan Collins in Maine, who's also up on the ballot this year.
But how popular is he in his home state? Has he done a lot for his home state as Senate Majority Leader?
Oh, he certainly has, and he's going to be focusing on some of those issues this year. The opioid crisis, he's always been strong on getting funds for his home state. Another issue is there's a push from the tobacco industry, actually, is getting behind the idea of having some limits on tobacco purchases for kind of lifting the age to purchases to 21, and he's the lead author on that legislation. That's going to be moving through in pretty soon after the recess, I think.
About a minute here, Laura. Are there any cracks in his leadership? Do you see any Senate Republicans saying, we've got to do this, and maybe Mitch McConnell isn't the right person?
Not seeing anything like that. The Republicans in the Senate are very loyal and aligned with McConnell. There's no one in his leadership team that's making a play for his job right now. I think as long as he stays in there and gets reelected, he's going to be there. He's having a lot of success in other areas, like confirming conservative judges, and that's they just confirmed 59 judges so far this year, and so he has other things that he can point to.
That is something that he points to a lot. The question is how much that matters to the people of his home state, but I guess we will find out. Thank you so much, Laura. That's Laura Litvin, Bloomberg News congressional reporter. And a reminder that Michael Bloomberg, the majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News, is a donor to groups that support gun control, including Everytown for Gun Safety. Coming up on Bloomberg Politics, Policy, Power, and Law, 3 ways President Trump's bad week may hurt his re-election bid. But first, Martin DeCaro has the latest on the world in national news. Martin.
Well, thanks, June. As new tariffs loom, U.S. businesses are making a final appeal to be spared. Bloomberg's Sean Donnan tells us that's because this next round of President Trump's tariffs will be different than earlier ones.
Really, the first round of tariffs that will directly hit consumer products, smartphones, laptops, toys, kids' clothes, the kind of back-to-school shopping, Christmas shopping, and this administration is clearly nervous about how consumers may react.
A 10% levy on $300 billion in Chinese imports would take effect September 1st on virtually every import not already subject to punitive duties. Sources tell Bloomberg Trump's move took U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer by surprise. His staff's now under pressure to revise an initial list targeting more than 3,800 Chinese product lines. Meantime, President Trump's tweeting his unhappiness with the dollar again, saying he's not thrilled with a strong dollar, and he blamed what he calls the Fed's high interest rates. His day job is a foreign affairs officer at the State Department, but the Southern Poverty Law Center says Matthew Gebert once served as the leader of a white nationalist organization in Washington. He hosted them at his home and published white nationalist propaganda online. Politico reports Gebert's been placed on leave. Pay attention if you live on the Atlantic coast. An El Nino, active for 6 months, is over, right as the Atlantic Ocean enters its annual storm season. By increasing wind shear in the Atlantic, scientists say an El Nino acts as a brake on hurricane development. The Atlantic hurricanes begin their most active phase in about 2 weeks. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Martin DeCaro.
Thanks, Martin. Now with our other top stories, I'm Michael Barr. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins and an investor in Equinox Gyms and SoulCycle, defended his decision to hold a Trump fundraiser. Ross says he likes to engage directly and support the things I deeply care about. After reports of a planned Trump luncheon tomorrow at Ross's home in New York's Hamptons drew boycott threats, the billionaire said he engages with political leaders out of deep concern for creating jobs and growing our country's economy. New York City officials are preparing a major traffic experiment in Manhattan. Officials want to make cars unwelcome on certain streets. Starting on Monday, cars will be pretty much banned on 14th Street, linking the east and west sides. Drivers will be allowed briefly on 14th for a block or so to make deliveries and for pickup and drop-off of passengers. In the UK, passengers traveling with British Airways are being warned they could face problems after an IT glitch yesterday. The airline says that although the issue has been resolved, there could be further disruption. Tens of thousands of passengers were affected by cancellations and delays at Heathrow and Gatwick. Sean Tipton, a spokesman for ABTA, says it could be costly for the airline.
They have to pay up to €600 a passenger compensation. That's on a long-haul flight, and €250 on a short-haul flight. But that's in addition to getting you another ticket, or if that's not suitable for you, giving you your money back. It's not either or, it's in addition to that.
And also in the UK, Ryanair pilots have voted to strike in a pay dispute. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans explains.
The strike comes as CEO Michael O'Leary struggles to keep a lid on wage claims after agreeing to the introduction of unions. Pilots that belong to the union will walk out for 2 days starting on August the 22nd. According to the British Airlines Pilots Association, hundreds of captains and first officers were consulted, with 4/5 of votes in favour of a strike on a 72% turnout. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
You might not know this sightseeing stop in Paris. In June, a 19th century mansion reopened as a museum dedicated to finance. There are interactive games, videos, and digital projections aimed at everyone from children to professionals. Coming up, a check on markets with Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet, plus your top business headlines. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. I'm Doug Krisner. More than $14 trillion worth of global bonds have negative rates. What are the chances U.S. Treasuries could join the crowd? Tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Attention investors, stocks got you sideways, worried about volatility? Then diversify into Class A income-producing property units for up to 21% cash flow. National Realty's Class A property fund includes only prime income-producing new construction properties. These are built far below market value in Brooklyn, Hoboken, West New York, and Delray Beach, Florida. You're secured on high-demand mid-rises. You're diversified with income from multiple properties. You're prioritized in cash flow with substantial bank-appraised equity and solid real estate backing you. National has a 12-year track record of success with over $800 million of property managed. Now's the time to diversify with up to 21% apartment-backed financial units for your IRA or monthly cash flow. Once you see these Class A locations, you'll wonder what took you so long to call 201-210-2727. Call 201-210-2727. An offer to buy or sell any security is only made by our private placement memorandum. Read it first and invest wisely. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. National is a real estate development firm. See us at nria.net.
And New York Community Bank.
Hey, New York, now that summer's here, warm up to NYCB's free checking with e-statements offer. That's right, free, as in free unlimited check writing. Free of monthly service charges, free of minimum balance requirements, and free of per check fees. Best of all, it comes with the convenience of a free Visa debit card and free online banking and bill pay. Want even more from your checking account? Then look no further than the NYCB family of banks. In the New York metro area, the NYCB family of banks is comprised of banking leader New York Community Bank and its divisions, Queens County Savings Bank, Roslyn Savings Bank, Richmond County Savings Bank, Roosevelt Savings Bank, Atlantic Bank, and Garden State Community Bank. For details, visit us at mynycb.com. New York Community Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
And New York Community Bank.
Thank you. Thank you for this great honor. As CEO of this company, I couldn't be happier with our accomplishments this year. We achieved double-digit growth. We lost key personnel this year, but we didn't miss a step. At this time, I want to take a moment to thank one of our key partners, Sirius Executives. When I first heard of Sirius, I was a little skeptical. What is an interim executive? When they told me one executive at 1 day a week can help get us double-digit growth, I was shocked. I didn't even know that was possible. And here we are, 12 months later, and Sirius will continue to be one of our key partners for years to come. Because regardless of the problems that show up in our business, they always have an executive solution ready for us. So Sirius, thank you for a wonderful year.
Hire executives as you need them on an hourly, daily, weekly, part-time, interim, or temporary basis. Sirius Executives, your interim executive partner. Learn more at SiriusExecutives.com. CERIUS Executives.com.
The David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations. David sits down with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Every morning, the first thing I do is read about China.
This afternoon at 5 on Bloomberg 1130. Brought to you by Wells Fargo Healthcare Banking. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Bob Moon with this Bloomberg Business Flash. The Standard & Poor's 500 rising for the third day. It is now climbing 1.6%. That is 45 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is higher by 1.2%, 310 points. And the NASDAQ is up by almost 1.9% right now. That is 143 points. 10-year Treasuries down 10-30 seconds. The yield is up to 1.76%. COMEX gold prices down 0.75%. That is 15.0870 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 2.1% to 52.20 a barrel. Brent crude is higher by 1.9% to 57.32. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes throughout the broadcast day and throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. In the past year, the S&P 500 has had a similar or greater gain 7 times. The next day, it declined 4 times for an average of 6.6% and advanced 3 times for an average of 0.8%. The S&P 500 right now has erased its losses for the week. And that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks, Bob. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Many of the citizens of El Paso took issue with President Trump's visit to the city yesterday in the wake of the mass shootings over the weekend. Here's Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke.
For him to have created the conditions that made an attack like this possible and ultimately likely, it's very insulting to us that he was here.
Joining us is Joshua Green, Bloomberg News politics reporter. Joshua, you write that there are 3 developments this week that might hurt Trump's standing with the key voter groups he needs to win in 2020. Let's start with the national furor over the mass shootings.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the demographic groups that Trump needs to reassemble to win re-election in 2020, suburban voters are a big part of that group. To the surprise of a lot of political analysts, in the end of the 2016 election, they broke for Trump. They helped get him elected. However, we've seen suburban voters moving away from Republicans, most pointedly in last fall's midterm elections, where the Democratic gains were driven by former Republican voters in places like Orange County, California, and the suburbs outside Dallas and Houston. One thing we know about suburban voters, they tend to be higher educated, have stronger views on gun violence. And if you look at the trends in polls over the last 20, 30 years, voting on issues of gun control has become much more important to them. So the combination of these gun massacres and Trump's unwillingness to push any kind of new gun control measures could drive these critical voters further away from him at a time that he really needs to be gaining support.
Now, the second thing you cite is the signs that his trade war with China may fail.
Yeah, and there are 2 ways that hurts Trump. His deepest base of support is in rural communities. And of course, China announcing that they were going to cut off U.S. agricultural purchases is only going to put more economic pain on those regions. The good news for Trump in electoral terms, I think, is that many of them are states that are so deeply red that they're unlikely to flip Democratic. But we've seen in states like Minnesota and Wisconsin that the rural population, were it to move away from Trump, could be enough to tilt some of those critical swing states. I think the far bigger effect, though, is the potential of China devaluing its currency further, which will put pressure on the manufacturing economy in the upper Midwest states. And most analysts, myself included, would tell you that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the outcome of those 3 states, all of which Trump carried in 2016, are likely to determine the next occupant of the White House. And Trump got elected promising this Rust Belt renaissance. If instead economic conditions deteriorate there as a result of his trade war, it could make it very difficult for him to get reelected.
But the farmers seem to stick with him no matter what, and he does has different programs to try to pump up the amount of money they're getting in.
That's true so far. I mean, one of the things I was looking at in the midterm elections was to look at farm-heavy congressional districts and see will they stick with Trump or will they flip to Democrats? There was a little bit of movement toward Democrats, but as I said, these tend to be so deeply red that they stick with Trump. However, just about everybody is expecting a very close election in 2020. And so if things continue to get worse, if government welfare payments aren't enough to offset farmers' losses, and they decide not necessarily to support a Democrat, but simply not to turn out to support Trump, that could prove critical in 2020.
Said everybody is expecting a close election. Are they expecting a close election as far as the Electoral College or as far as the popular vote?
Much more the former than the latter. I mean, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes and still lost the Electoral College in a round. So most people are looking at the electoral math because in the end, of course, that's what matters. But, were Trump to give up 3 states he won, the ones I mentioned in the Midwest, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, that would be enough to tilt the race toward the Democrats. So it's critical that Trump be able to maintain his support there and get things moving economically in a healthier direction for the upper Midwest than we saw this week.
And what about the fluctuating stock market? Up today,
it's not clear how much of a factor that's going to be in the 2020 election. Investors typically tend to vote Republican. Certainly there was skepticism among Trump in 2016 during the campaign among the kind of college-educated, wealthy Republican voters who'd be happy to support Mitt Romney, but had reservations about Trump because of his views on race and other things. But in the end, those voters broke for Donald Trump by a very large margin. And so a healthy stock market could certainly help him maintain those voters' loyalties, whereas if a Trump-generated trade war causes a recession, well, then Trump's going to have a big problem with those voters, too.
And in states like Pennsylvania, what faces him there?
Well, Pennsylvania's lagged behind the rest of the economy in terms of the rest of the country in terms of economic growth. There's a poll that came out yesterday that showed Trump's approval rating in Pennsylvania had fallen to 39% approval, something like 58% disapproval. Those are scary numbers if you're looking to 2020 and counting on Pennsylvania in your column. So Trump needs to change the story and he needs to change the direction of economic conditions if he's going to have a hope of winning that state and ultimately winning a second term in the White House.
All right. Thanks so much, Josh, for that analysis. That's Joshua Green, Bloomberg News politics reporter. You're listening to Bloomberg Politics, Policy, Power, and Law. This is Bloomberg. UK prosecutors have added an actual fraud count to the indictment of 3 former Barclays executives who are going to go on trial in connection with the bank's fundraising from Qatar at the height of the 2008 financial crisis.
Names matter. Your name, the name you've made for yourself, and the name of the company you represent. Because of you, they're names people can trust. That's why at 4imprint, every name and logo is printed with certainty. We pay attention to every detail because we know the way your name appears is the way it's remembered. So you'll know for certain that every item, from the right apparel to the most popular tech items, will be right the first time, on time, every time, at a great price, guaranteed. Because when you have passion, integrity, and certainty, the only name they'll remember is yours. Explore thousands of promotional products at 4imprint.com. That's the number 4, imprint.com. 4imprint. For certain.
Garden State Dining presents New Jersey's finer restaurants.
Enjoy casual fine dining at Rustica Restaurant in Cliffside Park. There's a new chef, a new Italian-American menu, and classic service in the most elegant, art-filled dining room. Rustica Restaurant and Lounge, a Gold Coast favorite on Gorge Road in Cliffside Park.
Dining al fresco at the Pico Tavern is like being at a summer resort. Enjoy exotic drinks on one of their 4 patios, $1 oysters on Wednesdays, and Thursday is lobster night. The best Sunday brunch is at Mike Monaco's Pico Tavern, old-school Italian cuisine located in Hackensack.
When you think of the Meadowlands and great food, one name comes to mind: Segovia. Segovia Restaurant, Segovia Steakhouse, and now the new Segovia Maison. Segovia, one name, and now 3 great restaurants in the heart of the Meadowlands.
Imagine an Italian restaurant so good that New Yorkers travel to New Jersey for. That's Grissini in Englewood Cliffs. Grissini, where you can enjoy Chef Alberto's homemade pastas and amazing new creations. The Zagat-rated Grissini, high-end Italian dining in Englewood Cliffs.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Dear Calvary Hospital, my mom Irene and dad Benjamin sacrificed everything for me. They were life givers in the truest sense of the word. Mom volunteered in the pediatric trauma unit at a major city hospital for 30 years. It was only natural that in their final days, just 6 months apart, Calvary Hospital was there to care for them as they do for so many families. Their cancer pain was relieved, as was our emotional pain. The compassion and care was unparalleled. The calmness and immaculate setting, peaceful and serene. At their end of life, they received a spirit of living that I will remember forever. Sincerely, Lorraine Braun.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. To learn more about our unique Calvary care, call us at 718-518-2000. Calvary Hospital is where life continues.
This is Bloomberg Politics, Policy, Power, and Law. It's now 1:29 on Wall Street.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker, brought to you by Dell Small Business. It often makes good business sense to delay paying suppliers, keeping cash free for other purposes. And now the concept is being taken to new levels of complexity. A global industry has grown up of financial go-betweens who buy unpaid invoices at a discount. The firms give vendors cash sooner than if they'd waited for customers to pay, if they're willing to accept less than what they're owed. Financiers say the practice known as supply chain financing is a win for all sides, but small business advisors call it supply chain bullying. They compare supply chain financing to throwing a life jacket to somebody you've just chucked overboard. And they say there would be little need for it if companies only adopted prompt payment practices. Supply chain financing isn't new. What is new are the growing number of emerging financing platforms pushing it on suppliers. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
A day after Puerto Rico got its third governor in less than a week following angry street protests, top official from new leader Wanda Vasquez's own party were talking openly Thursday about her desire to see a fourth take over the position, about their desire to see a fourth take over the position, although the new governor said that she did not intend to step down despite previous comments that she didn't want the job.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Politics, Policy, Power, and Law.
I'm June Grosso. Still to come, why judges are seeing red about porn producers filing the lion's share of copyright lawsuits in the country. But first, let's get a check on the markets from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet. Charlie.
Thank you very much, June Grosso. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They are all rallying right now on this Thursday. We've got the S&P higher by 44 points. That's a gain of 1.5%. The Dow up 290 now, up by 1.1%. NASDAQ up 140 points. That's a gain of 1.8%. So stocks wiping out their losses for the week. Jobless claims tumbled last week, and with more on that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
It's the second decline in 3 weeks. Jobless claims at 209,000, close to a half-century low. Nationally, there are more job openings than unemployed workers, and unemployment at 3.7% is close to a half-century low. Still, some regions are worse off. In Puerto Rico, unemployment tops 8%. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Vista Outdoor shares are plunging to a record low today, down 25.6% after the ammunition, long guns, and related products manufacturer posted first quarter results that missed expectations, also cut its year forecast amid, quote, unprecedented challenges. And Vitamin Shoppe reported comparable sales for the second quarter that missed the average analyst estimate. It's also agreed to be acquired by Liberty Tax for $6.50 a share in cash. Its shares are surging right now by 41.1%. 10-year down 6/30 seconds yield, 1.75%. Gold down 0.2%, $14.98 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.3%, $52.28 a barrel. Recapping stocks higher. S&P erasing the weekly loss. S&P up 44, a gain there of 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Sarah Halzack, who is writing about Kraft Heinz and their results today. So, Sarah, let's go back to February. Tell us about the cavalcade of bad news at that point for Kraft Heinz.
Yes, it was quite bleak. So in one day, they announced they were taking a $15.4 billion write-down on the business. They were slashing their dividend. They had received a subpoena for a SEC investigation into their accounting procedures, and their profit didn't meet expectations. So kind of a quadruple whammy of trouble that landed in February.
And what landed today?
So today they released earnings for their first half of the year. They had been delayed in reporting first quarter results because of all of this reexamining their books due to the accounting investigation. When they released those results today of the first half, they weren't very good. Organic sales fell 1.5%, and their operating income fell nearly 55%, and it just underscores we thought February was rock bottom, but it wasn't.
What have they been trying to do as a company? Have they been trying to cost cut?
Yes. So this is a company that, merged Kraft and Heinz, and 3G Capital is the private equity firm that orchestrated that merger. And their playbook always is one that really embraces cost cutting. And so that's reducing the workforce, cutting expenses, pressuring suppliers into better deals. And that's how Kraft Heinz has looked so good on the profitability front for some time now. It has industry-leading margins, but you can only cut costs so much, right? Mm-hmm. At a certain point, you've got to start growing that top line, and they've really struggled with that.
So this was the first investor conference call for the new CEO who's been in the job about 40 days, is it? How do you do?
So, there were some glimmers of hope from him in that he clearly acknowledged this playbook of cutting costs was not going to be enough, that they're really going to have to focus on innovation to grow their top line. I think the problem was, and the reason why the shares are down so much today, is that investors were looking for more specifics on how he would achieve that. And it was just really kind of broad brushstrokes. He mentioned a couple of examples of ways they could reach a greater share of shoppers in China, of ways they could court Hispanic shoppers better. But at the end of the day, this wasn't a fully formed plan. And I think that was concerning when the company is reeling to the extent that it is.
But is 40 days a little too soon to expect him to have a fully formed new plan?
Yeah, Yeah, it's definitely a tall order, but look, I think that this is a company that's in a very urgent position right now. And I think the other thing is that investors are seeing that despite the fact that packaged food is a challenging category overall, it is possible to win in it. We saw this just recently when Kellogg reported earnings with quite strong growth. And, you know, they have a stable of these kind of old legacy brands like Eggo and Pop-Tart and Special K and Frosted Mini Wheats.
I love my Eggos.
Many shoppers still do. And so when they see the turnaround success of a company like that has a portfolio that's not so different from Kraft Heinz, I think they're saying to themselves, you know, we expect to see more. And I think product innovation is really important to investors. I think that's an area where they really want to hear more about exactly what that means. Does that mean going into organics? Does that mean going into this new hot plant-based meat space that Beyond Meat has gained, you know, so much attention for, and there just wasn't really anything on that front. And when, you know, the innovations that the company has announced recently have been pretty ho-hum. They've been things like sour flavors of Kool-Aid or Brunchables instead of Lunchables. And I think,
oh dear,
yeah, that's sort of a low bar for innovation in my mind. And so I think when that's sort of the track record you see coming, while yes, 40 days is a short period of time to come up with a plan, you can see why investors are antsy.
Well, when he was the top executive at Anheuser-Busch InBev, did he oversee different product innovations?
Yeah, and I think one area where he had some success with that was in the premium end of the business. So we all know that craft beer has been a real disruptor to the traditional beer industry, that shoppers are gravitating towards these more boutique, upscale products that are kind of niche. And but when AB InBev sort of started trying to tap into that with its own product, it started seeing success. They saw people trading up to those pricier items, and it started boosting their sales. And so I think he telegraphed on this conference call that we're going to see him kind of take that same playbook to Kraft Heinz of thinking about this idea of premiumization and how they can drive sales by offering a more premium upscale product.
So just about 30 seconds here, but all in all, did you get a good feeling about what he's going to do?
I think he had some good ideas, but the question is just, does he have enough time to execute them with investors fleeing for the hills as they are? I think it's going to be really challenging.
Thanks so much, Sarah. As always, that's Bloomberg Opinion columnist Sarah Halzack. You can read more on this and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing in OPIN GO, coming up on Bloomberg Politics, Policy, Power, and Law. The biggest filers of copyright infringement lawsuits in this country are porn producers, and we're going to tell you why that's angering some judges. But first, let's get a check on the latest world and national headlines. Martin DeCaro has that.
Hello, June. Crop yields are falling, deserts are spreading, plant diversity is on the wane. That's the gist of a UN report on climate change, putting the world's food supply at risk. The study focused on the misuse of land. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change co-chair Valerie Masson-Delmotte warns that 70% of the world's ice-free land is affected by human activity.
When land is degraded, it reduces the soil's ability to take up carbon, and this exacerbates climate change. In turn, climate change exacerbates land degradation in many different ways.
Next month, a UN summit will seek plans to curb greenhouse gases. Looking for ways to deal with the migrant crisis, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is leading a congressional delegation to Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They'll meet government and civic leaders. The group will later visit McAllen, Texas, to monitor migrant detention sites. The Trump administration is trying to restrict applications for asylum by forcing migrants to apply in Guatemala rather than at the U.S. border. Its policy continues to cause a human backlog there, among other factors. The Associated Press reports the number of migrants now waiting to claim asylum has reached 40,000, either on a waiting list for an initial asylum attempt or waiting for a court hearing after being sent back across the border. The lawyer suing the National Football League because of the blown penalty call that helped decide a January playoff game. He says allowing his lawsuit to go forward would not lead to a flood of similar suits when games don't go some fans' way. Attorney Anthony Lamont is fighting the NFL's attempt to block his lawsuit, saying the circumstances in the NFC title game were unique. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in 120 countries.
Thanks, Martin. Now, with our other top stories, I'm Michael Barr. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins and an investor in Equinox Gyms and SoulCycle, defended his decision to hold a Trump fundraiser. Ross says he likes to engage directly and support the things I deeply care about. After reports of a planned Trump luncheon tomorrow at Ross's home in New York's Hamptons drew boycott threats, the billionaire said he engages with political leaders out of deep concern for creating jobs and growing our country's economy. New York City officials are preparing a major traffic experiment in Manhattan. Officials want to make cars unwelcome on certain streets. Starting on Monday, cars will be pretty much banned on 14th Street, linking the east and west sides. Drivers will be allowed briefly on 14th for a block or so to make deliveries and for pickup and drop-off of passengers. In the UK, passengers traveling with British Airways are being warned they could face problems after an IT glitch yesterday. The airline says that although the issue has been resolved, there could be further disruption. Tens of thousands of passengers were affected by cancellations and delays at Heathrow and Gatwick. Sean Tipton, a spokesman for ABTA, says it could be costly for the airline.
They have to pay up to €600 a passenger compensation. That's on a long-haul flight, and €250 on a short-haul flight. But that's in addition to getting you another ticket, or if that's not suitable for you, giving you your money back. It's not either or, it's in addition to that.
And also in the UK, Ryanair pilots have voted to strike in a pay dispute. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans explains.
The strike comes as CEO Michael O'Leary struggles to keep a lid on wage claims after agreeing to the introduction of unions. Pilots that belong to the union will walk out for 2 days starting on August the 22nd. According to the British Airlines Pilots Association, hundreds of captains and first officers were consulted, with 4/5 of votes in favour of a strike on a 72% turnout. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
You might not know this sightseeing stop in Paris. In June, a 19th century mansion reopened as a museum dedicated to finance. There are interactive games, videos, and digital projections aimed at everyone from children to professionals. Coming up, a check on markets with Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet, plus your top business headlines. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Trade wars. China responds to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs.
Volatile markets.
Yuan sinking to the weakest in a decade.
Traders rattled by a tumultuous week in the markets.
The latest headlines from around the globe. Stay with Bloomberg 1130.
Message and data rates may apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, this may be the last time you ever have to worry about hair loss, because Bosley is the real deal. They're giving women and men their hair back permanently, their real hair. All it takes to get started is a single text message. You'll get an absolutely free information kit and a free gift card when you text GREAT to 85850. Bosley will show you, for free, how great your hair could look. You'll also see, for free, why you're losing hair and how to get it back. Women and men all over the country trust Bosley because they're America's #1 hair restoration expert, ahead of the curve with the latest technology. And the best part, Bosley has permanent solutions to hair loss. You'll love what they'll do for your hair. So drop what you're doing long enough to send a text. Get your free information kit and gift card for $250 off by texting GREAT to 85850. Don't forget, that's GREAT to 85850.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
In the NFL, Duke Johnson wanted out of Cleveland, and he's received his wish. The running back's been traded to the Texans for a conditional 4th-round pick in next year's draft. Browns take on the Redskins tonight, and quarterback Dwayne Haskins' debut for Washington. 1 of 11 games this evening, kicking off week 1 of the NFL preseason. According to reports, Chiefs are signing free agent quarterback Mo Claiborne. Niners' 1st-round pick Nick Bosa will not play in the preseason after suffering an ankle injury yesterday. Golf, round 1 of the Northern Trust in New Jersey. Full coverage on Golf Channel. Troy Merritt has a 1-shot lead at 9 under, firing a 62. Tiger Woods was sluggish, a 75. He is 4 over. Baseball starts at 7 Eastern. Yankees put their 8-game winning streak on the line against the Blue Jays. I'm Brian Weber. This is NBC Sports Radio.
I never get sick. Never taken a sick day. I'm not going to let a little thing like 100-degree fever stop my business. You know what really makes me sick? Downtime. You know the cure to downtime? Grainger. With same-day pickup, next-day delivery options, and time-saving inventory solutions, Grainger keeps our facility running and fit as a fiddle. Some people go to the doctor. I go to America's trusted source for industrial supplies, because Grainger's got my back. Call, click Grainger.com, or stop by to see for yourself. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You'll do it right to get an outdoor space you love. Lowe's is here to help and help you save. Add a new patio or walkway and get square patio stones, now 10 for $10. Freshen up your deck with Valspar exterior stain and sealant starting at just $36.98. And for one day only, August 10th, all new and existing Lowe's credit card holders get 10% off purchases made with your Lowe's card. Do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Stone offer valid through 8/14. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Credit offer subject to credit approval and can't be combined with other credit offers. Exclusions apply. U.S. only.
Bloomberg Surveillance.
This is Tom Keene.
And I'm Jonathan Farrow.
On the next step for the trade war in Beijing, in Washington, Greg Valliere of AFG.
Tomorrow morning at 7 on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And good day to you. I'm Bob Moon with this Bloomberg Business Flash. With American equities extending the torrid rebound from Monday's rout, investors burned by one of the fastest drops of the bull market are now debating if the worst is over. The S&P 500 rallying by 1.6% at this hour. It's close to wiping out the damage caused by the biggest one-day sell-off of the year. The S&P 500 right now up 46 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 1.25%, 317 points, and the Nasdaq is higher by 1.9%. That is 147 points. 10-year Treasury prices down 6/32. The yield up to 1.75%. COMEX gold prices down 0.5%. That is $15.1180 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude is rallying today. It's up 2.8%. $52.57 a barrel, and Brent crude higher by 2.33% to $57.56 a barrel. And that's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks, Bob. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. It may surprise you to learn that pornography producers and sellers account for the lion's share of copyright infringement lawsuits in the country. In fact, judges may have seen enough. The courts are cracking down on porn sellers that file thousands of lawsuits against people for downloading and trading racy films on home computers. Joining me is Susan Decker, Bloomberg News patent reporter. So, Sue, describe the scheme that one judge called a high-tech shakedown.
Well, it's a common scheme that's used actually by a lot of movie makers, but nobody does it at quite the level of these two porn producers. What they do is they file what's known as a John Doe lawsuit against an internet protocol address. And then they ask the judge, give us an order that we can go to the ISP providers and say, give us the identity of this person on the who's using this IP address. They then go to the person and they say, well, you know, it's $150,000 per infringement of a movie. You downloaded X number. How about you give us $2,000, $3,000, and we won't change the lawsuit to put your name on it and publicly let everyone know in the world that you were downloading porn.
So their business model is actually litigation rather than the films?
No, they all have legitimate websites, and their argument is that this is the only way that they can see under the current scheme to deal with piracy. But it's interesting that the other porn companies, who are also having the same problem of people swapping movies, aren't going through this rather extreme method of kind of shaming their customers.
Some judges, as you mentioned in your story, are finding that the tactics are objectionable. A D.C. federal judge, Royce Lambert, says one of the companies, Strike 3, quote, treats this court not as a citizen